I'm at the point now in Matthew 12 where he asks them the question, or else how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man? Mark says it sort of differently. No man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man. This next verse is going to be difficult because it's pretty different from how it's said in Matthew and Mark, and that is how I originally have it. Or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house? That's how I have it combined from Matthew and Mark. Luke, however, says this, verse 21 and 22, when a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. But when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him, he takes from him all his armor wherein he trusted and divides his spoils. Those are pretty different. A lot of the same words are there. I'm just going to have to start over. The way it's combined from Matthew and Mark makes sense if that's the only way it was stated and there's no other record, but Luke has it so different that I'm just going to start over. So, Matthew, or else, how can one enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man? That is very simplified, very quick. There's not much detail given, just the strong man, and it starts out by saying how. So it's like, you can't do this unless you do that first, then it'll work. So, fail, problem, success. Luke, however, has, when a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are at peace. So it starts out with success. I mean, it's not your success if you're trying to steal someone's goods. It's that person's success. So it's starting out with something good, then, but when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him. It goes right into the solution. Let's just look at it as if this strong man, this armed person keeping his palace, that's bad, right? You're trying to overcome him and take his goods. So from that point of view, I feel like I have to put this setup first, that everything is good, at least in their point of view. It's a problem. When a strong man keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. Then because of that, you can't overcome him. That's when the problem comes around. And also, it helps out to take a look at Mark, which says, no man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods, except he first binds. So it's just starting with, it can't be done. Right? That's the problem. So still, I would have to have this overarching explanation first, then the fact that it can't be overcome. I already know I'm going to start with the way Luke has it, that everything is in place. It's just talking about that man. When a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. Now, but when a stronger than he shall come upon him. From the point of view of Matthew, or else how can one enter into a strong man's house? If your point of view is the one trying to enter, that means you can't do it. You can't enter and spoil his goods except you first bind. So problem, solution. Luke has, but when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him, that's just right into the solution. He takes from him all his armor, so that's the success. Mark, no man can enter into a strong man's house, so problem. So Matthew and Mark have it the same. You can't do it. How can you enter and spoil his goods except he first be bound? Solution. So instead of just going right into the solution, as Luke has it, I want to put a bit of the problem as stated in Matthew and Mark, because that's how they both start. No man, or how else can one enter? No man can enter, or else how can one enter? Because I already have this from Luke, when a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace, it wouldn't make sense to go into Matthew, or how else can one enter into his house? I think it's easier to say when a strong man keeps his palace, to just no man can enter. It just flows easier with no man, how it's stated in Mark. He's strong, he's protecting it, no one can get in unless you bind him. And since I already have a strong man, I don't want to repeat now no man can enter into a strong man's house. I just want to say his house. When a strong man, that setting's already in place. When a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. So now it's not repeating in Luke. So now no man can enter into his house. You don't need to repeat who he is and what he's like. So no man can enter into. That's all Mark. No man can enter into. Is there anything from Matthew I can combine with that? Or else, how can one enter into is both. Matthew and Mark. And I just had the thought I could change it to no one man. Because Matthew has how can one. But when you say no man, it's like saying nobody. Nobody can enter into his house. Not saying no one single person. It's not saying with a group you can do it. No. He's saying that nobody, just nobody, it's going to be totally blocked off from anyone. The solution has to be that you bind him, then you can take all his stuff. And this makes sense when you're talking about spiritual warfare. If you are defending yourself through God's power, right? You have control over your thoughts using self-control. That is you protecting your palace. That's what it's saying. It's not that demons ganging up on you are going to be able to overcome your self-control. It could be, but if you are remaining in self-control, if you are guarding your palace, your mind, through the power of God, then no demon is going to succeed. No group of demons are going to succeed. That protection has to remain. You have to stay disciplined in your warfare, in your defense. So I'm not going to say no one man. That would mess up the parable. It would mess up the meaning. It would also just ruin the wording as well. No man can enter into. Matthew continues, a strong man's house. I will put house from both, but I really want to say his house and spoil his goods. That's an option. Mark, no man can enter into a strong man's house and spoil his goods. So I'll use one of those his. I'll say Mark, just so that I don't repeat strong man. No man can enter into his house. Mark has and spoil his goods, except he first bind the strong man. So you can't get what you want unless you have the solution. So it's success mentioned, then the solution. Matthew has spoil his goods, success, except he first bind the strong man. Solution. Then he will spoil his house. So it's kind of like mentioning the success, the solution to get to the success. Mark, spoil his goods, first bind the strong man, then he will spoil his goods. So it's the same between Mark and Matthew. Luke again has it, but when a stronger than he shall come upon him and overcome him. This is the solution. He takes from him all his armor wherein he trusted. That's the success. So I think I might just go with how Matthew and Mark have, mentioning the success first and spoil his goods. Yeah. That'd be a good end to this statement. When a strong man armed keeps his palace, his goods are in peace. No man can enter into his house and spoil his goods. And just ended there. And instead of going on to, except he first bind the strong man and then he'll spoil his house, I'll make that a whole different sentence and I'll begin it the way Luke says, but when a stronger than he. So instead of just he first bind. Who is this he binding him? It's someone who's stronger than this strong man. Yeah, that's good. Strong man's house and spoil his goods. Mark and spoil his goods. So it's the same. And this his has to be only Matthew, because I already used one from Mark earlier. No man can enter into his house and spoil his goods. There's no period here. Luke, the verse before, that's the colon after peace. Matthew has and spoil his goods, comma, except he first bind the strong man, then he'll spoil his house. Mark, enter a strong man's house and spoil his goods, comma, except he first bind the strong man, and then he will spoil his house. There's no period between either of these. I think I still want to put one in here, so I'm going to take one from, say, the end of the verse in Matthew, and I'll put it there to keep these separate so that "but when a stronger man" is the new sentence.